Losing someone you love can feel like one of the most painful experiences in life. But what if there was a way to soften that pain? In this video, we'll explore Stoic philosophy, which teaches us to view loss not as a burden, but as part of life's natural flow. By understanding that we don't lose our loved ones, but rather return them to the universe, we can find peace and emotional strength. Together, we'll dive into the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, who offer practical guidance for dealing with deep grief. Before we jump into the main content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming videos related to Stoic philosophy and emotional resilience. Now, let's shift our perspective on relationships and explore the wisdom of the Stoics. Have you ever thought about your relationships from a different perspective? Imagine seeing your connections with others not as something to possess or hold on to, but rather as experiences to return when the time comes. This shift in thinking is at the heart of Stoic philosophy, which challenges us to rethink our notions of loss, attachment, and control. For many, the idea of losing someone can feel like an unbearable burden. But according to Stoicism, the way we frame loss and attachment directly affects our emotional well-being. One of the most celebrated figures in Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius, often emphasized the transient nature of life. He believed that the things and people we cherish are not possessions, but temporary gifts. In his meditations, he reflects on the impermanence of everything around us, teaching that by accepting this, we can alleviate much of our emotional suffering. Accept everything that comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, he wrote, suggesting that what happens to us is part of a larger design we have no control over. By adopting this mindset, we are encouraged to see relationships not as ownerships, but as opportunities for temporary connection. When someone leaves us, whether through death, separation, or fading friendships, rather than feeling we have lost them, Stoicism teaches us to return them. This might sound paradoxical, but it carries a profound emotional freedom. If we understand that people and events in our lives are transient by nature, the sting of separation diminishes. We begin to appreciate the moments we shared rather than grieve the absence. Emotional attachment and its perils. To understand this better, let's turn to another Stoic philosopher, Epictetus, who reminds us that much of our emotional turmoil stems from the attachments and expectations we create in our minds. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them, Epictetus writes. According to him, we suffer not because of external events, but because of how we react to those events. When it comes to relationships, this is particularly true. Our attachments are often based on the desire to control what is uncontrollable, whether it be the actions, emotions, or the presence of others. For example, many people fall into the trap of believing that love or deep attachment means trying to keep someone by their side forever. This perspective, however, is rooted in fear and insecurity. By expecting permanence in relationships, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment. Stoicism, on the other hand, encourages us to view life and love as fleeting experiences, ones that we can cherish without becoming consumed by them. A poignant illustration of this is the story of Anakin Skywalker from the Star Wars saga. His deep attachment to Padme Amidala, the love of his life, is both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Anakin's inability to accept the possibility of losing her eventually drives him to betray his own values, as he seeks ultimate control over fate. His descent into darkness illustrates the dangers of allowing emotional attachment to dictate one's actions. This theme resonates with the Stoic teaching that we should never place our happiness in things beyond our control, especially in the form of emotional dependence on others. The story of Anakin, Skywalker, a Stoic perspective. Anakin Skywalker's tragic fall can be seen through the lens of Stoic philosophy. Initially, Anakin's love for Padme is pure and driven by deep affection. However, as his fear of losing her grows, his attachment turns into an obsession. He becomes consumed by the thought of being separated from her, which clouds his judgment. Stoicism teaches that when we allow ourselves to become emotionally invested in things outside our control, whether they be people, objects, or outcomes, we hand over our freedom to external forces. As Epictetus reminds us, freedom is the only worthy pursuit. Everything else is a distraction. In Anakin's case, his fear of loss leads him to believe that he must control everything in his life to protect Padme. This mirrors the teachings of Epictetus, who warns that our desire for control is often the root of suffering. In fact, Stoicism argues that trying to control external circumstances, things like relationships, material possessions, or even how long someone stays in our lives, inevitably leads to disappointment and grief. Instead, we should focus on controlling our own reactions and emotions. If Anakin had embraced Stoic principles, his actions would have been entirely different. Rather than succumbing to fear and jealousy, he would have accepted the reality that he could not control Padme's fate. He would have been able to cherish their time together without letting the fear of her death consume him. This is where Stoicism offers a powerful tool for emotional resilience. By detaching from the idea that we own or control others, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. The importance of emotional assent. A key concept in Stoicism is emotional assent, the idea that we give consent to our emotions, often without even realizing it. When something happens that triggers an emotional response, we tend to immediately accept that feeling as valid. However, according to Stoic philosophy, not every emotion warrants our agreement. Epictetus advises us to practice objectivity by taking a step back and assessing our emotions before allowing them to guide our actions. This is especially true in relationships. When we feel jealous, hurt, or afraid of losing someone, Stoicism teaches that these emotions are not inherently wrong, but they should not dominate our thinking. Instead of blindly accepting these feelings, we should question their validity. Is this emotion based on rational thinking, or is it simply a reaction to something we cannot control? By exercising this kind of emotional discernment, we prevent ourselves from becoming overwhelmed by our passions. The practice of emotional assent can be challenging, especially in the context of love and relationships. Yet it is precisely in these moments that Stoicism can have the greatest impact. When we acknowledge that our emotional responses are choices, we empower ourselves to respond with reason rather than being driven by impulse. As Marcus Aurelius writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Finding balance between love and detachment. A recurring theme in Stoic philosophy is the balance between caring for others and maintaining emotional detachment. Stoicism does not advocate for coldness or emotional repression, but it does encourage us to cultivate a sense of inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. Loving others deeply and maintaining emotional independence are not mutually exclusive. In fact, Stoicism teaches that true love comes from a place of selflessness. where we appreciate the people in our lives without becoming attached to their presence. Seneca, another prominent Stoic philosopher, offers valuable insight into the nature of love and loss. He advises that we should not allow grief to overwhelm us when we lose someone we care about. Instead, we should acknowledge the natural cycle of life and appreciate the moments we shared with them. "It is foolish to mourn endlessly for those we love," he writes, "for they have returned to the universe from which they came." This teaching echoes the Stoic belief that nothing truly belongs to us, not even the people we love. In this sense, love becomes a form of acceptance rather than possession. By understanding that our relationships are temporary gifts, we can enjoy them fully without clinging to the idea of permanence. This perspective not only reduces the fear of loss, but also allows us to appreciate the present moment more deeply. Practicing Stoic detachment in daily life. How then can we apply Stoic principles of detachment in our everyday lives? The key is to start small and build emotional resilience gradually. One way to begin is by practicing gratitude for the people and things we have without becoming attached to them. When you express gratitude, acknowledge that everything in life is temporary and that change is inevitable. This simple shift in mindset helps us prepare for loss without being consumed by it. Another practical step is to regularly reflect on the impermanence of life. Marcus Aurelius often meditated on the idea of memento mori, the reminder of death and the transient nature of all things. By contemplating this regularly, we become more comfortable with the idea that nothing lasts forever, which makes it easier to accept loss when it comes. Finally, it is essential to practice emotional self-awareness. Whenever you find yourself becoming emotionally attached to someone or something, take a moment to assess your feelings. Are you placing your happiness in something beyond your control? If so, try to shift your focus back to what you can control, your own thoughts, actions, and responses. This practice not only helps prevent emotional suffering, but also fosters a deeper sense of inner peace. Conclusion: turning grief into gratitude. In the end, Stoicism offers us a powerful framework for navigating the complexities of love, attachment, and loss. By understanding that the people and experiences in our lives are temporary, we can learn to appreciate them without becoming enslaved by fear or grief. Instead of viewing relationships as possessions that we must hold on to, Stoicism teaches us to embrace the impermanence of life. We don't lose people. We return them to the universe from which they came. As Seneca reminds us, the goal is not to repress our emotions, but to manage them wisely. By practicing emotional resilience and detachment, we can find peace even in the face of loss. This is not a denial of love, but an acknowledgement that true love allows for freedom, both for ourselves and for others. And when we embrace this mindset, we turn what could be sorrow into a deeper gratitude for the moments we've shared. Through Stoic philosophy, we find strength in the idea that nothing is truly ours to keep. Everything is part of the ever-changing flow of life. And with this understanding, we become free, not from love, but from the suffering that comes from holding on too tightly. So, as you navigate your relationships, remember, you don't lose people. You return them. And in doing so, you allow both them and yourself the freedom to continue life's journey, unburdened by attachment, but enriched by the love and experiences shared. Thank you for watching this video. If you found value in this message, please like the video and comment below with your own story of navigating loss or attachment. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and loved ones, so they too can reflect on these Stoic lessons and find comfort in their own experiences.